Welcome back, guys. In the last video, you saw us fire up the Redneck Supra. If you're not familiar with what the Redneck Supra is, it is our 2000 Ford Mustang that we swapped in a Vortec 4200. That is a straight 6 GM motor along with our 5-speed TKX transmission. If you're just watching this for the first time, just joining this one, go back and watch those other ones. We got a full playlist and all of that. If you've been following along and you're ready for the next update, here's what we're gonna do today. So we got a brand new part in. We got a custom flywheel that's gonna use our factory starter. Those of you that watch know that we put in kind of a prototype unit, used a different starter. This one's gonna allow us to use the stock starter. Actually probably gonna be able to remove some shims, and this bad boy weighs in at about 17 pounds. So where'd we get this? Well, none other than Atlas Industries. So our guy Eric over there hooked us up with this so we can get this in here. These are now live on his website. You can go place an order now. I think he put them up maybe a few days ago and they might have already sold out, so you'll have to go check. I want to say they're a little over $300, which is, I think, a killer price for a 17 to 18 pound custom flywheel. Should work with really any of the manual transmissions. And then just like all these other swaps, or all the other Atlas swaps, they use the 10.5-inch small block Chevy clutch. So today we're gonna dive in, get this thing up on the lift, go ahead and pull the transmission, and cross our fingers we can get to the clutch without having to pull the motor. We might have to drop it down a little bit, but the only way to find out is to get started. So let's jump right on in. So with the car up on the lift now, I say lift, I just have quick jacks. I'll show you guys that. We got it up there now, good to go. So I'm gonna crawl under here. First step is gonna be, I'm gonna go ahead and pull that drive shaft out. So you guys saw us install that last time. And then we'll work on, unfortunately, there's not really a good way to unhook the hydraulics for the clutch. So we'll just have to drain that out, undo the line, pull that out. And then at that point, we can get our mount and our bolts out of the bell housing and pull the transmission down. I gotta go look to see if I have the shifter still in there. I don't remember if I do. Yeah, so pretty easy process. You know, there's 4 bolts on the drive shaft, pull that out, a couple bolts on the cross member, 4 bolts to the transmission, 4 bolts for the shifter. I mean, really, it's just a whole bunch of sets of 4 bolts. So kind of just walk you guys through each time we get that process done. There's not much to it. And then get to that bell housing and see if we can get it out of there. I'm nervous that it's not going to work. I'm thinking maybe we can unbolt the engine and kind of tilt it down a little bit. That might give us enough room, I'm hoping. Otherwise, we'll be pulling the motor back out, which I really don't want to do. I was kind of hoping it was in there for good for a while. So we will see momentarily. Okay, so I went ahead and pulled the 6, not 4 bolts out. Once those are out, the shifter comes out real easily. And the nice thing about this Tremec unit, this TKX, and I think it might be some of the other transmissions, there's actually 2 pockets, so you can flip the shifter around and you can have your shifter back here, or if on your vehicle application you need it further forward. And then actually you can buy another shifter that fits even further up where that plate is. But for now we use the furthest back, fits perfect in here. So that's out. We'll get a cover on this and then get back underneath and start taking the lower mount, the rear mount of the transmission off. All right, drive shaft's out, easy as could be. Those 4 bolts. The son's out here helping me. And then if you don't have a set of these, they're like just these plastic plugs. They're kind of stepped. There's a whole bunch of them for different transmissions. They're convenient to put in here so you don't spill the fluid out. So got that out. Next we'll bring the trans jack in here, get underneath here. Probably take the hydro out and unbolt my sweet, sick custom transmission mount. Okay, underneath the car, we've got my transmission jack up here, tighten down a little bit. Here's the mount I made. You may have seen it in the previous video, but if you're new, this will be the first time. So these are just some spacers picked up off of Amazon, and then obviously just some 2x2 angle that I did. We've got a standard mount. This is actually the mount for a TH400. All the GM transmissions pretty much use the same style mount. So we're gonna take these 4 bolts out. Probably just drop this down from the car. We'll just leave this on here, no reason to mess with that. And then there are 4 large bolts. You can see one of them right there, all around the transmission. We'll take those out, slide the transmission back, drop this dude out. And then that's when we can get access to the hydraulics and the bell housing clutch area. So, a few bolts. Next time we come back, this should be coming down. This is one of the 4 3/4 bolts that have to come out. So I've got those out of the transmission now, and should be able just to lower this dude down. Let me back this camera up so you guys can see a little better. So we've got those 4 off the transmission body. This is out. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop this down slowly. Obviously I got to come back out, and then you can see that hard line goes to the throw out bearing. So we'll keep all that in there. The hydraulic clutch stuff is in there. We'll keep that in the bell housing, pull this out, and then we'll get that out of the way and see if we can get that bell housing out. I know I've said it a couple times now, but drive shaft, this mount transmission, easy part. That's going to be the tricky part. I think we've got enough room though. I mean, it really looks like there's enough space, but I might just be trying to stay positive about it. So we'll see. So before I pull this all the way out, you can see how that kind of works. With the throwout bearing stays inside. Those are our shims, our spacer shims. And our new flywheel should require less, but we'll obviously measure it. So I just got to pull this back just a tiny bit more, and we'll get those splines out of the bell housing and drop it down. But and one of the easiest transmissions to pull for sure on this setup. It's really nice, convenient. As soon as I started lowering the jack, it just kind of slid out of place, which is nice. So hopefully it goes back in just as easily though. All right, so transmission is out, bell housing is out. I'm gonna flip this around and show you guys what the clutch looks like, and then we're gonna go ahead and remove the clutch and remove our flywheel. So let's take a look. So I've got the bell housing just resting on the back side of the transmission. That way I didn't have to disconnect the throwout bearing and the hydraulics. That way we don't have to re-bleed it. So there's our clutch. So that is the McLeod. It's rated for like 700 foot-pounds, so should be just a bit more than what we want. I like the clutch to be a little bit over what the power we're gonna make. Obviously NA, we're nowhere near that. So we've got our ARP bolts to take off, and then we'll get the clutch out of there. And then the flywheel, I think I ended up just using the factory bolts. And the nice thing is I did end up buying the ARP bolts, but unfortunately they didn't work with that flywheel, but I've checked them and they should work just fine with the new flywheel. So that'll be nice. We'll have ARP hardware on everything. And I never did end up driving this on this setup, so the clutch should still be, you know, fresh and brand new. Never ran it, drove it, so we'll be able to put the new flywheel in and bed the clutch in on a brand new flywheel and everything, so that should be nice and good. So I'm gonna pull that off, and then we'll swap our flywheel around. Feeling really grateful that I was able to get that off without having to drop the motor or anything. So very happy with that. And there we have it, flywheel off. So our next step is, I was thinking about it, this bolt here that holds on, and sorry, the shadow, that holds on our adapter plate actually goes through for the starter. And since we're changing starters, the Atlas Industry Kit for this adapter comes with a few different length bolts depending on what starter you're going to use. And if my memory is correct, that bolt was actually shorter or longer for that starter versus the factory one. So I'm probably going to go ahead and right now swap the starter out and then go ahead and proceed with putting the rest of the flywheel, etc. back on. So pretty simple procedure. Obviously I got to unbolt the power wire and the trigger wire onto the starter, and then I'm going to take that bolt out right there, and there's a little close-up view. I'm going to take that out and reinstall the factory starter. So we'll get that swapped out real quick, and then I'll go grab the other flywheel and show you guys a little bit better look at that, and we'll get it bolted on with those ARP bolts. But we are moving right along. Don't want to jinx it, but not too bad. So a quick look at these. Again, this is kind of like the prototype one that we had in there just for testing purposes. This is the new one, which again is available from Atlas Industries. And the biggest thing you'll notice, and it might be hard to tell from here, is that how much further this sits back from the rear surface. And what that does is it should help us eliminate the need for all the additional spacers that we had to run on this. I'm actually not even sure what this came from. I'd have to ask Eric, but you know, it's you know, it actually sits lower than the back side of this, where this mounting position actually sits above this. So again, same, you know, number of teeth, but works with the factory starter. That one didn't, just the offset and everything. So should be great. I'm gonna go grab the ARP bolts, and let's go ahead and get this guy installed after I change out the starter. Here's a quick look at the factory 4200 starter and the starter that we modified. Don't ask me what this came out of because I don't remember. But we had to put some, you know, mounting tabs on here. But so again, with this flywheel, we're going to be able to transition back to this. With Eric's adapter kit, it comes with a myriad of bolts, studs, whatever you want to use. As you can see, this is not quite as thick. So we had this bolt on here going through the backside. I'll probably put in the shorter one. That should be fine. I could also use a stud if I want, and then we're using this bolt. So lots of options, because there are a few other people with the factory starter. I did have to trim the bell housing. I know that Calvin did or used to sell an adapter that used a smaller starter that you didn't have to trim the bell housing. So maybe if you need a shorter bolt or something for that, that would work as well. So lots of options, which is great. We're going to put this guy back in here, the starter one, or the factory one, I should say. Nice thing is the trigger wire, it's just a direct connector, so I will have to cut and put this guy in, but that's easy enough. And then just like a standard starter, we'll put the big old battery cable on there. So I'm going to toss this in, get that sorted, situated, figure out which bolts I need, and move on to the next step. We've got our stock starter bolted in, good to go. I will have to run the trigger wire afterwards because it is different. And then here we go. We got that beautiful flywheel on there. We use the, actually use a Ford 4-valve, so a motor that I think could have come in this car. Not the base model, of course, but a new edge. We use their flywheel bolts, all 8 of them, non-washer. I put a little blue Loctite on them and a little ARP lube underneath the head of the bolts. And we're going to torque those guys down to about 75 foot-pounds, so we'll make sure to do it in, you know, a star pattern, probably do, you know, 25, 50, 75 or something in that pattern and get that locked in, and then we'll go ahead and line up our clutch. So I'm going to torque those down now, and then we'll come back after the clutch is on. All right, we're back underneath here. It is a new morning, new day. Last night I went ahead and wrapped up the clutch. So the next thing we need to do is, actually, you can see my mic's in there. We have to run shims behind the throwout bearing here. So we have to put the bell housing on. We're going to measure. I'll throw up a little chart. It kind of shows how you measure, but essentially you take the distance between fingers of the clutch to the back of the bell housing, and then the front of the throwout bearing to the back of the transmission, figure out the difference, add your spacers, and make sure you have it in the right gap. So there are some spacers on the front of this transmission. I don't know if I can, they're probably still hanging off there. Yeah, I'll show them to you when we get them back on there. But I'm going to take my my tool here, which is slipping my mind all of a sudden, our gauge here, and we're going to measure that first. So I'm going to bolt the bell housing on and get started with that. Here's a look at those shims I was talking about. These are 1/4-inch shims here, and then we actually before were using an additional larger shim. But with the new flywheel, our clutch actually sits further back towards the back side of the bell housing, so we only need our 2 1/4-inch shims for a 1/2-inch total. Measurement on that's pretty simple. Oh, if I can line these up. So those sit on there, except I put them on backwards. They have a little indentation so they lock into place. Just the same as the back of the throwout bearing here. So the measurements, we need to see the distance between here with the throwout bearing compressed, and then the fingers on the clutch to the back of here. Take this space minus this space, and that gives you the distance in between, which needs to fall between like 0.125 and 0.375. With these shims, we're sitting at about 0.32, give or take, so we've got a little bit of room. That should work. We need to get the bell housing bolts back in, make sure this thing's sitting square, got it all nice, and then we will put our transmission back in, the fun part. Here we go. So transmission's back in, bolted in. Actually went ahead and tossed in the drive shaft. So we've got all that. I'm going to, don't mind that little rust spot. Just don't look at that. Don't look at that. I'm gonna go ahead and get the starter trigger wire bolted in or plugged in, and then that way I can redo that wire up top. Should be pretty easy. We'll drop the shifter back in, and then I do need to swap these wheels. I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but that's a 275. That's a 245. I've already done the other ones. That one's already swapped around, so that needs to go on the back. So while it's in the air, we'll go ahead and do that. And then I think this part of the project is done. Maybe, guys, maybe we'll get this thing to drive out of the garage for the first time ever. Maybe. I need to button up some wiring up there, and I've got a coolant hose to put together, and then we got to throw some water, some coolant in it. I think I've got some coolant around here. So the goal would be to maybe see if we can drive this out of the garage, maybe wash it. That's the goal. So I'm gonna keep trucking. I'm gonna get that starter done and the shifter, and then come back to you guys. All right, so I've done a handful of things since the last little update. Let me show you what I did underneath the engine bay, and then we're this close to maybe seeing this thing get out of the garage. All right, so went ahead and I can't remember if I told you guys I got the water coolant all done here, but I still got a few things to do over here. So, you know, I'm gonna put some covering, put some nice sheathing over all this wiring. I still have to run these two wires to relays for the fan. I'm gonna cover up the pink wires, of course, you won't see any of that. And then this needs to get, this is what powers my fuse block that I added here for the ECU. I'm gonna put this on a relay that's triggered by the ignition. So for now, as a quick test run, we're just gonna put this on the battery. That way we turn on the pump and all of our injectors and everything in the ECU. So I'm gonna let this down off the quick jacks. We're gonna connect that wire and we're gonna fire this thing up. I'm gonna let it run. I'm gonna go get my laptop so I can at least see coolant temp and all that, but it should be fine. It's nice and cool out. We're just gonna drive it, hopefully just down the drive and then maybe through the neighborhood and back. Hasn't left the garage since I bought it back in January. So this could be big, could be big. I'm excited. So we'll fire it up, get the HP tuners on it, and see if it will leave the driveway. out, test drive. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you haven't been following the build, you gotta follow the build. Lots more to come. We do some suspension work, get the interior finished up, and a little bit more wiring, but she's almost ready to go. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.